If you are someone who is looking to get into macro photography this year, but you are unsure of what photography gear you actually need for this genre, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to give my suggestions on the gear you will need to begin your macro photography journey. The first and most important thing you will need is a camera body. You don't have to break the bank and buy a very expensive camera because honestly, any DSLR or mirrorless camera will be good enough for macro photography, regardless of which brand you decide to get, or if it is a low-end or high-end camera. Just get what you feel will be good enough for you and your budget. The reason I don't think it matters which camera you get is because photography is all about mastering the skills of the craft, and the camera you have won't matter if you haven't mastered the skills yet. Some cameras do have better features than others, which can make photography a lot easier, but I don't think buying an expensive camera with great features will benefit a beginner much since you don't have the photography skills yet. Once you feel like you have maxed out your potential with your current setup is when I would recommend upgrading to a better camera. I truly believe that any good photographer can take great photos regardless of the camera they have, so I recommend to just focus on developing your skills first and then later down the road, upgrade your setup. For anyone that's curious, I currently use an Olympus M5 Mark III, and I decided to switch from my Nikon D3400 to this camera after 4 years of shooting with the Nikon because I felt like I finally pushed the camera to its limits, and it has a few features that the Nikon D3400 doesn't have. The biggest feature being a focus bracketing system and the fact that it is super lightweight and compact. The next most important piece of gear you will need is a lens. The great thing about macro photography is that you don't need a true macro lens to take macro photos. There are great budget options that can turn your kit lenses into macro lenses. The first and the best budget option in my opinion is the Raynox DCR250. The Raynox is a snap-on lens that can turn any lens into a macro lens. This is a great option because it's very simple to use with a good working distance, and it also doesn't degrade the image quality. And on top of that, if you already have a macro lens, then adding a Raynox will increase your magnification, which is good for those tiny subjects. I use this for the majority of my macro shots, so I highly recommend it if you are either looking for a budget option or you want it for the extra magnification with your macro lens. Another good budget option is extension tubes. Extension tubes fit between the camera body and the lens to act as spacers. The additional distance from lens to sensor results in higher magnification. These can also work on just about any lens, and it will give you an additional magnification boost if you are using it paired with a macro lens. But in my opinion, the Raynox is a much better option, mainly because with the extension tubes, the working distance will be extremely short, but they are still a solid option if you decide to get tubes, especially since they don't affect the image quality. The last budget option I will mention is reverse rings. Reverse rings are probably the cheapest budget option you can buy to get into macro photography. They can get as cheap as $10, and they are simply just adapters that you screw onto the front of your lens, and this will allow you to flip the lens backwards. Once you flip the lens backwards, it will become a macro lens. This option is my least favorite out of the three, mainly just because the other options are so much better compared to reverse rings. If you are curious about any of these options, then I have videos that cover all three more in depth individually in my budget macro gear playlist that I will leave on the end screen. Now on to macro lenses. There are a few brands that come to mind when thinking of the best brands for macro lenses, and they are Laowa, Imzuko, Sigma, and Tamron. All have great macro lenses. I'll have a list of lenses on the screen that I recommend looking up and giving a try. I currently use the Imzuko 60mm lens, and it is a fantastic lens. It is super lightweight compared to just about any other macro lens, and it's on the cheaper side too. Highly recommend it if you have an Olympus or Panasonic camera. The next piece of gear you will need is a speedlight flash. A speedlight flash will benefit you in many ways. The first benefit is that it is an extra light source that will become very useful when you are photographing something in low light. That extra light will allow you to shoot at slower shutter speeds and still come away with sharp photos. The light from a speedlight flash is very bright and quick, which also helps freeze motion. Godox is a great brand if you are looking for a flash for your setup. I currently use the Godox TT350 and it's a great flash, very affordable and simple to use. The next piece of gear is a huge game changer if you don't already have one, and that is a diffuser. A diffuser is needed if you are using a flash for your macro photography because the light that comes from your flash is very bright, which can cause bright and distracting highlights and shadows on the subjects you shoot, which can ruin a photo. A diffuser will soften the light from your flash, resulting in soft and diffused light in your photos, which is more appealing to look at. I currently use the AK diffuser, which is easily one of the best diffusers on the market right now. I have a review on this diffuser if you want to learn more about it. I'll leave that video on the end screen. If you don't want to spend the extra money on a diffuser, then you could easily make one yourself. I also have 2 DIY tutorial videos where I make simple homemade diffusers. Both of these videos are in my budget macro playlist as well if you are interested. The next piece of gear is necessary if you want to go out in the early mornings before the sun rises or at nighttime, and that is an extra light source. For those early morning or late night sessions, I will use a Biltrox LED light, which has a great battery life and it can get very bright, but a simple flashlight or a headlight or even your flashlight from your phone will do the trick. If you plan on being outside with your camera for hours, then I highly recommend getting some extra batteries for your camera to help extend your time outdoors. I also think it's a good idea to always have extra SD cards in your bag, just in case one day you leave without one, you will have that extra one in your bag ready to use. Or it could be a situation where you run out of storage or one stops working for whatever reason, you'll have that backup card ready to use. The final piece of gear I will mention is a tripod. In my opinion, I don't think a tripod is essential for macro photography because I think it's much easier to shoot macro without one, but I can still see how it can be beneficial for someone. If you are a beginner, I can definitely understand how a tripod would be necessary because I used to use one too when I first started because I struggled bad with getting shots in focus. So I do recommend starting off with a tripod if you are brand new or if you feel like you don't have a steady hand. The great thing about macro photography is that you don't have to spend a ton of money on the best setups to take great photos or get started with the genre. But overall, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, then consider leaving a like and subscribing for more content like this. I'll catch y'all in the next one.